Hello Unites and welcome back to Mathemagic. In today's lesson we're going to be moving on and continuing with our topic of properties of geometric figures, and we're going to be looking at our first new section. We're looking at a thing called congruent triangles. Now in particular we're going to be talking about what congruence is today in today's lesson, and in the next lesson we're going to be doing a bit of further work with congruent triangles as well. So today we're going to be using congruent triangles, so we want to be able to understand what congruent triangles are. So explain what congruence means, identify the 4 tests for congruency in triangles, and then find unknown lengths and angles in congruent triangles. So let's get started. Okay, first thing we need to do is we need to talk about what congruence is. Now, that we have a definition here about congruent. Two shapes are congruent if they are exactly the same. So what congruence just means is that two shapes are exactly the same. And in particular, there's two big criteria that I have in mind when I think of them being exactly the same. So it's the same shape and it's the same size. So the angles are the same. So here, same shape. Usually when I think of it, I think of the angles. The angles inside my shape are the same, and they have the same size. So all the side lengths are going to be exactly the same as well. So side lengths for the size and angles for the shape. This means that corresponding sides and angles will be equal. Now, corresponding sides and angles just means that in our two shapes, what will happen is, because they're exactly the same, is there going to be some, the sides are going to match up. The corners are going to match up and the angles are going to match up. And so here, the matching sides and the matching angles will match up. So for example, we have two triangles here, and these two triangles are congruent. So if you have a look, let's talk about the sides first. I've got this side over here, AC, and if you have a look, it has one dash through it. In my second triangle, I have this other side, ZY, which also has one dash through it. So those two sides are matching, they're equal in size. And then we can do the same for all the other sides. So here, if you have a look at the two dashes line, we've got CB, which has two dashes, and here we've got YX, YX, which has two dashes, and the final side is this AB, which has three dashes, and ZX, which has three dashes. So if you have a look, all three sides are exactly the same, and they're matching. All three sides, they're matching with each other, and they have the exact same side length in the matching triangle. The other thing is that they have matching angles. So if you have a look, the angle at C matches up with the angle at Y. The angle at B matches up with the angle at X, and the angle at A matches up with the angle at Z. And so here, these are an example of congruent triangles. Exact same shape, exact same size. The same angles and the same side lengths. And so what we can do is we can actually identify the corresponding sides and corresponding angles in these two shapes. So for example, one of the sides was in our first triangle on the left, we have the side AB, which matches up with ZY. Now I've written this in reverse alphabetical order because I wanted to make the letters match up. So if you look at where A is and where Z is, those two match up in terms of position. So this is why I've written it as AB is equal to ZY. And then you've also got, for example, in the next one is BC, which is equal to, well, if you have a look here, that matches up with YX. And the final one is, wait, hang on, I've written it in the wrong order. That should be AC, my bad. AC is equal to ZY, and then the final one is AB, which matches up with ZX. So I fixed that one up. Okay. So we've got corresponding sides, and we've also got corresponding angles. So for example, we've got angle ABC. So if you have a look at that, where that yellow dot is, that matches up with angle ZXY. You've also got angles, what's the other one? We've got ACB, which matches up with angles AYX. And the final one is angle BAC, which is equal to angle, let's see which one that matches up with. So BAC is this one over here, and so that one matches up with X, Z, Y. Okay. So here we've got matching sides, we've got corresponding sides and corresponding angles being equal. And so here I've just listed out what those are. Now, here in mathematics, we need to actually be able to do some notation with this. So when we want to write that two shapes are congruent, we have a symbol for that. And in particular, I'm going to show you that symbol for our triangles here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write triangle ABC to talk about this first triangle over here. So ABC. And the notation that we're going to use looks like this. And you sometimes might see a different symbol for it. But usually we write it as 3 horizontal lines like this. So this symbol just means is congruent to. So it just means that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. And now the important part here is I need to actually make sure that the letters match up with the corresponding letters in the other one. So here, if you have a look, A matches up with Z. So I'm going to write this as Z. B matches up with X, Z, X. And Y matches up with C. And so here, I need to actually make sure that I write the letters in the matching order so that we can actually show that they are corresponding to each other and they're congruent. So the symbol for congruence is 3 horizontal lines like this. Sometimes you might also see it written as one curly one at the top and like this. But this symbol just means congruent. These two shapes are congruent. They're exactly the same. Exact same shape, exact same size. Okay, so that's what it means for two shapes to be congruent. What we also need to talk about is we need to identify a few tests to actually check for congruence. And this is actually going to be, what we're going to be focusing on is, in particular, we're focusing on triangles. With triangles, there's actually a few special things that we can do with triangles to actually prove that two triangles are congruent. The first thing we need to actually be able to do is identify a few congruence tests. Now, congruence tests are, you can kind of think of it as like a checklist of things that are required to show that two triangles are congruent. So if you have a look here, two triangles can be tested for congruence if they follow any of the following conditions. So if a pair of triangles satisfy any of the 4 following tests that I'm listed out here, that means that they are both congruent. So let's go through the 4 tests here. The first one is if they have 3 pairs of equal sides, and we call this test SSS. SSS is just short for side, side, side. So if the 3 sides of my 2 triangles are matching and they're equal to each other, that means that our 2 triangles are congruent. So for example, if this side is equal to this side, and then this side is equal to this side, and our final side over here, this side is equal to this side, this passes my SSS test, which means that these 2 triangles are congruent. So if if we have 3 pairs of matching sides, that means that we have a congruent set of triangles. We have a congruent pair of triangles. Okay. The next one is 2 corresponding sides and the angle between them being equal. Now this one is called SAS. Now SAS stands for side, angle, side. And now the order that these letters come in is really important. Notice here it says that we have 2 corresponding sides and the angle between them. The between them here is really important. Notice here that A is between the 2 sides. That's really important here. It's not ASS or SSA. This is SAS because the angle needs to be between the 2 sides. So here what that would look like is if I have 2 pairs of matching sides, so these 2 sides are equal, and then these 2 sides are equal, and then the angle in between them. So if I have the angle here and this angle is equal to this angle over here, that means that the 2 triangles are congruent as well. So if it passes this test, that also means that it's congruent. Okay, the next one. 2 angles and any corresponding side equal. So this is called AAS. And so what this means, AAS, hopefully by now you figured out the pattern. That's just angle, angle, side. And so if we have any 2 angles and a third side, that means that the 2 triangles are congruent. Now, the placement of the 2 angles and the placement of the sides in this particular case doesn't matter. It's only for SAS where it's really important. So here, I can have any 2 angles. So let's say I have this angle here. So this angle is equal to this angle. And I've also got this angle is equal to this angle. And I've got any third side. So let's say I've got this side here. And this side is equal to this side. That means my triangle is congruent. That my 2 triangles are congruent to each other. So 2 angles and any corresponding side are equal, AAS. Now the final one is a little bit different to the rest. This one is the right angle, hypotenuse, and another side equal. Now here, right angle is pretty straightforward. So this one is RHS for right angle, hypotenuse, side. So that's what this acronym stands for. Now this one is fairly, the right angle part is fairly straightforward. If I have a right angle in my triangle, so let's say over down here, and these two match up, that's fine. The next part is the hypotenuse. Now if you remember from right angle triangles, the hypotenuse is a very special side in my right angle triangle. The hypotenuse is a side which is directly opposite my right angle. So if you have a look over here and I draw a dotted line, if these two sides are equal, I specifically need the hypotenuse to be equal to each other. So here, these two sides need to be equal. And then any third side. So it could be the one on the left, it could be one at the bottom. As long as I have one pair of sides that being equal, that means that I have a pair of congruent triangles. So here I need the right angle, I need the hypotenuse, and I need another side. So here, these are the 4 tests to check if any two pairs of triangles are congruent. If we have a pair of triangles and they happen to match up with any one of these tests, that means that they're congruent. So the 3 tests are SSS, side, 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 SAS, side, angle, side, AAS, angle, angle, side, and the third one, RHS, right angle, hypotenuse, and side. Okay, so here, what we can do is we can actually check what test we're going to need to use. So let's have a look at this example. Choosing the appropriate congruence test. So what we want to do is identify which congruence test we'll need to use in order to show that these pairs of triangles are congruent. And so we've got 6 examples here. Let's have a look at them. This first one. Now if you have a look, we've got some matching pieces of information. Let's have a look at what we have here. So here we've got a pair of matching sides being equals. First one here, a side. Then we've got an angle next to this side. So we've got this angle over here. These two angles are equal. And we've got a side on the other side of the angle. So another side here. Now if you have a look at my 3 tests I had from above, notice here, we've got a side, we've got an angle, we've got a side. So this is actually going to pass the side angle side test. Because we've got a side, we've got the angle between it and the third side over here. So this is going to pass the SAS test. Side, angle, side. That's all we need to do. We just need to identify the test. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. This next one here. What do we have here? Well, if you have a look at the 2 triangles, even though they have been rotated or switched around, these two are still going to be exactly the same. And let's identify what information we have. First of all, we've got this right angle here. And so we've got one angle at least. And even better, they've told us that it's a right angle. Then we've also got a pair of matching sides. And then we've also got another pair of matching sides. But if you ever look at this side in particular, we just want to check, is that the hypotenuse of my triangle? And if you have a look, that is indeed the hypotenuse of my triangle. If you have a look, it is directly opposite my right angle. And so that is my hypotenuse. So here, this is going to be, we have a right angle. We've got the hypotenuse in both of the triangles being equal. And we've got a final side. And so this is going to pass the RHS test. This is going to pass the RHS test, which means that our 2 triangles here are also going to be congruent. Okay, let's have a look at the third one. So here we've used the SAS test, we've used the RHS test. Let's have a look at the next one. What matching information do we have here? Well, let's have a look. We've got a matching pair of angles. We've got these angles over here being matching. We've got another matching pair of angles. This angle matches up with this angle. And we've got a third side. So we've got a side here. And so here, what do we have? We've got 2 angles. We've got angle, and we've got a side. And so this is going to pass my AAS test. This is my angle side test. Okay, let's have a look at the 4th one. Now, at any point, if you want to go back and have a look at those 4 tests just to make sure you've got them correct, you can. I'm just going through the questions fairly quickly. I apologize. Okay, let's have a look at this 4th one. Okay. What do we have here? One side that matches up with another side over here. They have the same side length, 1 dash. Then we've got the side with its 2 dashes, 2 dashes. And we finally got this side over here, which has 3 dashes, 3 dashes. And so here we've got a side, and another side. So this is going to pass my SSS test. So here, this one's going to be my SSS test. Okay. Now the last two are a little bit trickier. I'm going to point out a few things about these next two tests. Oh, I just skipped down ahead a bit. Let's have a look at this one. Now here, if you have a look at this one, you look at the right angle and you're immediately thinking, I'm going to use the RHS test. This is where I need you to be really careful, because we're still going to go through the steps of identifying what information we have. Okay, first of all, you've identified that we've got this right angle here. We've got a pair of matching right angles. Next thing that we have is we have an equal angle over here. We've got a pair of equal angles. And finally, we've got one side over here. One side over here. Now, if you have a look at this side, is this side the hypotenuse of my triangle? Well, if you have a look at my two triangles, the side opposite my right angle, well, we don't have actually any information about this side here. We don't have any information. We don't know anything about this side over here. And so we're not going to be using the RHS test, even though they've given me a right angle. But if you have a look, well, a right angle is still an angle, so let's label our information that we have. We've got a pair of matching angles. An angle. We've got a right angle. Now, even though it's specifically a right angle, that's still a pair of matching angles. And we've also got a final side. And so here, even though we've got given a right angle, this is actually going to pass the AAS test. There's right angles, but they're still, even though they're specifically right angles, they're still just an angle. And so they've actually told us that these two angles are matching because they're actually equal to one another. And then 90 degrees. Let's have a look at the final one. Now, once again, if you have a look at this one, you might be looking at it and going, oh, I've got a right angle. I have to use RHS again. Now, this is where I'm going to say, be really careful. Let's have a look at what information we have. We've got a right angle. They match. We've got a side. They match. We've got another side. They match. Now, in order for it to pass the RHS, we need it to have the right angle, hypotenuse, and the side. We've got a side, great, but do we have the hypotenuse? Let's have a look at the triangle. The hypotenuse is the side directly opposite my right angle, and in both of these cases, we don't have any information about the hypotenuse. So it's not going to be the RHS test. But what do we have? Well, actually, if you have a look here, we've got a side. We've got another side, and even though it's a right angle, once again, like I said, this is just an angle. We've got an angle that's between our two sides, so this is actually going to pass my SAS test, side angle side test. So for these questions, when you're trying to identify what test you're going to use to test for congruence, what you want to do is just identify what type of shape do you have. Does it match? What does it match up with from those four tests? Is it SSS? Is it three pairs of matching equal sides? Is it SAS? Is there two sides and then an angle in between them? Is it AAS? Do we have two angles and then a third side? Or is it going to be RHS? So you want to be really careful and you want to just identify what type of test you're going to be using. Okay. The final thing we need to be able to do is be able to identify corresponding sides and angles. So basically all we need to do here is we know that the following triangles are congruent. What we need to do is just find the missing values. So let's have a look at these first examples. So if them since they're congruent, what this tells me is that it's going to be the sides, corresponding sides are going to be equal, corresponding angles are going to be equal. So all we need to do is find the corresponding sides or angles. Let's have a look at this first one. We've got two congruent triangles, and we've got these two missing sides, x and y. What we want to do is figure out what x and y are equal to. Now, let's start off with x. Now, if you ever look at where x is this side over here, and it's the one that's opposite the square and right next to the black circle. So if you have a look over on my other triangle, well, because they're congruent, the side which is opposite the square and right next to the dot is going to be equal to x. So that's going to be this side over here. All we're doing is just lining them up and seeing which ones match up. So here, firstly, x is going to be equal to 5. Pretty straightforward. Now, if we have a look at the other one, we want to find y. Now, we'll have a look at where y is. Now, y is over here, and it's on the side which has the square box on one side and the black dot on the other side. So if you have a look, square box, black dot, and so that tells me that y is just going to be equal to 7. There we go. Pretty straightforward, fairly quick to just read off our diagram. Okay, the next example is a little bit trickier. This one's a little bit trickier. So let's have a look at this example. We've got two triangles. And in these corresponding triangles, we have a few angles. Not corresponding, congruent. We've got some angles. So first of all, we've got this 100 degrees. we've got A, we've got B, and if you have a look at my second triangle, we actually got this other value of B as well. So these two B's are going to match up. But we want to actually find what the value of that B is in a moment. Let's just first start off with A though. A is this angle over here, which is between the side with 2 dashes and the side with 3 dashes. So let's have a look on my other triangle. 2 dashes over here, 3 dashes over here. And so that tells me that A needs to match up with 25 degrees. And so A is going to be equal to 25 degrees. Nice and straightforward. Now, for B though, this is where it's a little bit tricky. Now B would just match up with B from the two triangles. But that's like writing B is equal to B is like, duh. What we actually want to do is find the value of B. Now, if you have a look at my first triangle, I'm actually going to need to pull something from an earlier lesson to help me figure this out. I'm going to need to use the angle sum of my triangle because this is still a triangle. When I add up all the angles inside my triangle, it's going to be equal to 180. So if you have a look at my left-hand side triangle, well, I've got B plus A plus 100. That's going to be equal to 180 degrees because that's the angle sum of a triangle. Triangle. Now we actually found the value of A from the previous step, and so this is just going to be B plus 25 plus 100 is equal to 180. And like we normally did, what we can do is we can solve for B. So B plus 125 is equal to 180, and so B is going to be 180 minus 125, which is going to give me 55 degrees. And so for here, what we need to do is actually pull in some of the information that we learnt from this angle sums of triangles. So that's it for today's lesson, Year 9. Hopefully that was helpful. So in today's lesson, we started looking at congruent triangles and we went through the 4 tests for congruency. We went through what congruent meant, and we also used congruence to help us find missing sides and angles. That's it. As always, I hope you guys are staying safe wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.